What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. And today I have a very special guest today, man. Ryan McDowell, man. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some fantasy with you.
Yeah, it's always great to talk fantasy, man. No pressure, just chopping it up with the boys. Right. So first off, I want to start off, what was your thoughts on the past fantasy season? Because it's been a roller coaster. We had to deal with COVID, not knowing if there was going to be a season, no fantasy this year. Like, man, that was suspense killing me to find out if we're going to have fantasy this year. But what was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's really the first thing that comes to mind. I'm glad we had a season. We spent a lot of last off season, I would say June, July, August, coming up with all these contingency plans as commissioners. Scott Fish and I do a lot of work in that space, and several others do so much good work and run so many awesome leagues as well. But yeah, we spent hours just talking about what if they canceled the season after week 4? What if they canceled the season after week 10? And all these different plans. And I'm so thankful that we didn't have to worry about that once things really got kicked off. That there were some hiccups, right, for sure, but the NFL just powered on. It became pretty clear that nothing was going to slow them down, and it got a little ugly there off the field for a while, but they got it in. But on the field, I think it was one of the most exciting seasons we've had in a long time, right? We had amazing seasons from Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, huge bounce back year, Travis Kelce, one of the best tight end seasons we've ever seen. And then what really has me excited as a dynasty player is these young running backs, especially that crop of rookies last year. The rookie class overall. We had some awesome wide receivers as well, but we needed that running back class from a dynasty standpoint because it was starting to get a little thin. Some of these guys we thought would really pan out and maybe even become elite players, elite dynasty assets. Looks like it might not happen. So to get so many of these young bucks in, it's a big deal. Yeah, man. Because
there's names like Jonathan Taylor that get you excited for year 2. There's guys like Cam Akers, even DeAndre Swift. These guys had no training camp. They had no OTA, no preparation. They kind of just were thrown into the wolves. Like, I counted the first 4 weeks of football basically as like preseason games. But some of these rookies, they stepped up and showed out. I'm on the field and I got to show out for my job. And I was like really impressed with this, this rookie class of running backs because the future only looks brighter with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, we almost forget that now, right? That there was no rookie mini camp. They're doing everything through Zoom. There's obviously no preseason games. Training camp was shortened, and they still basically performed collectively as probably the top rookie running back class we've ever had.
I kind of wanted to say that. I didn't do the digging.
Put it out there. Put it out there.
Yeah, full send it.
Yeah.
So who's your standout stud guy in fantasy as, for the rookie running backs? Like who are you really surprised about? Like who's like, wow, he's a stud.
Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised, but I think the standout is Jonathan Taylor. It was certainly a slow start. There were some reasons to be concerned along the way. Marlon Mack blows out his ACL or his Achilles in week 1, and the community as a whole, the dynasty players especially, but really all fantasy players. Redraft players as well. It was full steam ahead, JT, from week 2 on, but then it really wasn't, right? It was a slow start for him for sure, but. From week 13 on, we got to get basically almost into the fantasy playoffs. But week 13 on, he was a league winner. He was the RB1 over that time, and he averaged over 26 fantasy points per game in those last 4 or 5 games.
When it mattered, the playoffs are huge for people. So I think what I took out of it is with these rookies, patience is key. Don't give up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Don't ship them off. Don't be like me. Week 3. Trading Justin Jefferson because he didn't start the first 2 games. Don't be that guy. That was my biggest mistake for the year. But
Yeah, that one hurts.
yeah, that's painful.
But you're right, though. I mean, even again, dynasty players, you think that we're going to, you think we're going to have patience, especially with young players, especially with players who came into the league so highly valued already, like Taylor. But I run the monthly ADP over at Dynasty League Football, and that midseason ADP, and that's based on mocks, but I think it gives a pretty good picture of how the community is feeling about players, especially during the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw his ADP tumble. I think he fell to the second or third round in startups when he had been, kind of on that borderline of a first rounder. And now, after we saw how he ended the season, now he's the 1.02. Now it's Christian McCaffrey and it's Jonathan Taylor, and that's it.
Exactly. It's crazy how that works and how quickly that can change, and it's amazing. But it does get me excited. My next question for you is Cam Akers. Like, where do you rank this guy between the year two running backs? As a Rams fan, I'm really excited for what I saw at that end of the season in the playoffs. Like, I love seeing the Wildcat with him. I love seeing him getting 20 touches. Like, what do you think about Cam Akers in year two?
I think, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of these guys today, I think, but it feels like almost every one of these sophomore running backs, these guys coming off the rookie season, I think there's at least a little bit of reason for concern with most of them. I'm not sure there is with Cam Akers. We saw the great end to the season, especially in the playoffs, up until week 12. So he has the injury. He misses quite a bit of time. I think that injury was actually a lot more serious than we were led to believe at the time. But he misses multiple games in the middle of the season with that. He comes back week 8, and by week 12, he's really kind of coming into form. And in week 13, that was the first time he even played more than 30% of the snaps.
Yep.
Or more than a third of the snaps, I should say. But from then on, from week 13 on, he's playing at least 60% of the snaps. In that playoff loss to Green Bay, he plays 96% of the snaps, and he put up the fantasy numbers to go with it. Had a couple of big games in the playoffs, and to me, he's the RB2 in the class. He's only behind Taylor, and in my overall dynasty rankings, he's RB6.
Nice. Because I definitely go into this next year, I had him like in my rankings, right behind Jonathan Taylor, because I don't see anything keeping me from, having him there. And my next question for you, are we going to have to worry about Darrell Henderson, in dynasty or in redraft or whatever? Do we have to worry about him being back there taking touches?
I don't really think so. Honestly, I mean, he looked pretty impressive early in the season, right? He actually had 3 RB1 games through the first 5 games of the year. Akers was banged up. Malcolm Brown was banged up as well. And Henderson looked pretty good. But after that, he did almost nothing, right? He was almost phased out. And I think a lot of times we look at those smaller backs and just assume they're going to be pass catchers. They're going to be like those third down backs. And that's not really his game. He's not better than Akers. He didn't see more targets than Akers once Cam was healthy. In fact, he was among those 3 guys, he was third on the team in targets and receptions from week 10 on. So, I mean, Henderson's a nice backup plan, in Dynasty. I want him. I'm fine having him on my bench, especially if I am rostering Akers. But from an Akers perspective, I'm not worried about Henderson.
No. So,
we say all that. Sorry, man. Yeah, we say all that, and we didn't even talk Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, I think that upgrade is going to be huge, obviously for the entire offense, but it's good news for Cam Akers.
I have this weird theory of the preview of the Wildcat with McVay that he's going to try to put that into the playbook. I feel like the less time, or not less time, but if you can make a way to have Matthew Stafford stay upright, because there's questions on the O-line, why not throw a Wildcat in that situation where Matthew Stafford's not going to be the guy to get hit or have to make those hard decisions with the O-line? Because I really don't see, options for us to go in free agency with the cap situation of trying to bring in a top tier O-line guy. But I think the Wildcat can be a possible way, to keep Matthew Stafford healthy for that 2-year window.
Yeah, I mean, we know McVay is creative. We know Akers has the chops to play the position. I think I'm remembering correctly that he was a high school quarterback. So
Yeah,
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, man. My next guy, I mean, a lot of people are loving this guy, Swift, man. I got to hear your thoughts. Do you think he's going to get max touches, even though we're hearing like coach talk he is?
I mean, I think he probably does, only because, and of course, I mean, we've got free agency to come. We've got the NFL draft to come. So we've got plenty of time for things to change. But you just look at that offense, and it starts with Jared Goff. And that's not a good place to start. So, I mean, I think they have to try to build around DeAndre Swift, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got these, these old school football guy types that have come in to run this team now, as far as the new coaching staff. Yeah. So I think that probably bodes well for Swift. But if they go out and re-sign Adrian Peterson, it's just, it'll just be another kind of eye roll situation. In Dynasty, I think Swift is kind of overvalued at this point. I was looking at, yeah. So we're seeing a gap between he and Akers, Dobbins, really all these other running backs, even like Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. I mentioned this on Twitter the other day in our March DLF mock drafts. We had 6 players who were first-round picks in every single mock we ran, which is 6 total. So it's some of the names Of course, it's McCaffrey, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley, and DeAndre Swift was one of those. And just to basically be viewed as a consensus first-round pick, it's a little too much for me. A little too much too soon.
I'm glad we agree.
I'd rather have Akers a round later, or even half a round later. Pretty easily.
It's really crazy right now to think, that he's going so high with so many questions on that offense. One with Goff, and then, are they going to re-sign Kenny G, or are they going to re-sign Marvin Jones, which I probably don't think either. But it's like it becomes Swift is the sole guy there. Like, you can't expect, the stars and the moon with him. And also, my nightmare is Todd Gurley signing there, or Malcolm Brown signing there, with the connection with, where Bowles is the guy that has the connection with the Rams. So I feel like, man, I really want to pump the brakes on Swift right now. Just let's wait and see what happens.
Well, I mean, they're going to bring in someone, right? I mean, Peterson's a free agent. I think they're just kind of riding it out with Kerryon Johnson. I don't think they're just waiting for his contract to expire, basically. Really, it feels like. So they're going to bring in some type of competition or complement to Swift, and we'll just see how much of a threat that is.
Yeah, because Lynn also loves that 1-2 punch. It works, what I mean? When Melvin Gordon, Eckler, even for fantasy standpoints, one of those RB1s eat. They are top 10 or even top 15, running backs finishing the year in Lynn's system with that 1-2 punch. So I definitely think, they're going to bring somebody in. Even if they, do bring in a Todd Gurley, I think Swift will be obviously the 1A in that situation. Like, he'll put up fantasy relevant points, but I'm not seeing RB1 numbers. You know what I mean?
Honestly, if Gurley's the guy they brought in, that might put me as a buyer on Swift, because I mean, I could see that knocking his ADP or knocking his value a little bit, enough to turn him from overvalued to a reasonable buy for me.
Yeah, correct.
Right. Yes.
So this brings me to my next one. There's a question mark on James Robinson going into year 2, but for me, I feel like I can see him being, a top 10, running back again with the new, personnel, and then possibly getting Lawrence. Like, what do you think about James Robinson in Dynasty or in redraft?
It's interesting that you phrase it that way, Dynasty or redraft, because I'm really valuing him and viewing him the same way in both formats. Nice. Basically, very, very short-term asset. If I've got him on my Dynasty roster, I'm expecting and hoping, I guess we could say, for one more good year of production. That's another team that has to bring in some type of competition. I mean, he saw a crazy workload, almost 70% of the snaps for the Jaguars last season. That was 7th overall among running backs. He had 240 rushing attempts. The rest of the Jaguars running backs combined had 41. So, I mean, he was just seeing a crazy percentage of the workload there. And even from a pass catching standpoint, through those first couple of games, he was kind of viewed as a plodding back, and he can't catch the ball. And then they just started feeding him targets on top of that because Chris Thompson is dead, right? Yeah. So Chris Thompson was doing nothing. So they just give Robinson the targets too. So I like him. And I would say in drafts, dynasty startup drafts, he's probably overvalued. I'm not taking him in the 3rd or 4th round. Gotcha. I just don't think he'll give me enough years to make that pick make sense. But I think the trade value is still pretty low on him. I mean, a late 1st rounder could get it done. A couple of 2nd rounders could get it done. And if you're one back away, that might work. But again, I'm really only expecting one more year out of him, kind of in this fantasy starter role.
Yeah, I'm in a startup right now, and I just him at 408. So I'm glad.
Okay, well, late fourth. I'm okay with that.
I'm praying for another top 10, performance, and then I just ship him off, for good value next year.
Right. So, his ADP. Let's see. I'm gonna grab it here. His ADP is, it's like 3.09. So, you got a value there. I definitely wouldn't take him in the 3rd round though.
So my next one, man, I'm having some questions with J.K. Dobbins. Like, there's a small hype train that's like building slowly, and I know as soon as we get towards the summer weather, it's gonna explode. My concerns really here is that I think he's gonna be capped out in a lot of value, being that he's not going to see a lot of targets out of the backfield because a lot of people play PPR.
Yep, I think that's it. You nailed it. That is the concern, and that's not a Dobbins thing. I think he can catch the ball. Mm-hmm. It's just a Ravens thing, right? And even in 2019, when it felt like Mark Ingram was really involved in the passing game because he saw he caught almost every target he saw. Right, yeah. He had 29 targets. He caught 26 of those balls, and he took 5 of those for touchdowns. So he had 15 total touchdowns, over 1,000 rushing yards, and he was still just the RB11.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you told me my running back's going to score 15 touchdowns and rush for over 1,000, I feel like I've got a top 5 back.
Yeah.
And instead, RB11, that's great. Best year probably
great.
Right. One of the best years certainly of Ingram's career, but that almost feels like the ceiling. And he had to have the crazy touchdown production to even get there. Yeah. I'm with you. I think a little bit of a concern on Dobbins, just as far as the hype. If you're looking at him as a top 5 dynasty running back, that's probably too pricey. Mm-hmm. I think he can be a fantasy starter for the next 2, 3, 4 years, maybe. But until they change that offensive scheme where they just don't really get the running backs involved in that receiving role, then his upside is definitely limited.
Yeah, I really feel like that's what the Ravens are lacking to make it to the big dance. I mean, you could have, Lamar still run the ball, but get these running backs more involved in pass catching as well to extend the play or, possibly score, take it home run. Because I really think they need to change it up this year. And if they do end up bringing Gus Edwards back, that just brings another guy that's going to take touches from him as well. So we already know that, Lamar Jackson's the RB1. So we don't need any headaches. So it's kind of like, man, I don't know where to put my thumb on J.K. Dobbins going into these drafts because it's like, the hype train is only going to get bigger. He's going to get more expensive, but then it's going to get so expensive where I'm going to get turned off from it.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think they bring Gus Edwards back. He's the talented player too.
Yeah.
And honestly, if they don't, they'll bring somebody else in because Ingram's already gone. So they've got to have a decent with the way that running game works, that they're cycling in so many bodies. They'll bring in somebody of note if Edwards somehow gets away, but I think he's an RFA, so he'll probably stay.
Yeah. So this next one, I ruffled a couple feathers today and yesterday about CEH. I used the word bust, but I want to clarify. He was a bust based on his ADP. Okay, he was a lot of, first round hype. He kind of went at the back in redrafts like 109. That's a little pricey for me, and I've seen him go higher in some drafts. So I use the word bust because he finished RB22. So how do you feel about CEH in general going into this next season?
Right. So, you kind of have to look at the total package there, right?
Yeah.
Is he a bust based on that ADP? Yeah, he is, because he RB22. I mean, he did not live up to the hype, but I think that was the real problem, right? The hype, the expectations, and it started with him being a first round pick in the NFL draft. Nobody really expected that, right? And then, of course, the situation that he's drafted into, that we're always chasing Chiefs. We always want a piece of that offense. And then when Damian Williams opted out, I mean, like, the floodgates opened, right? He went from that trendy kind of sleeper pick, not quite, I wouldn't say sleeper, but that trendy pick in like the second or third round to now he's a top 5 pick in redraft. And I mean, you probably saw it too. I saw him drafted 101 in a few redraft leagues. Right. So that's the real problem, that our expectations were a little out of whack with him, because he gave us 4 RB1 games. He gave us 4 other games as in RB2. So 8 games where he basically produced starter level fantasy points. So pretty good. I think he's a dynasty buy because we've seen his value fading a little bit. He's down into the 3rd round of dynasty startups right now, and I think that's a fair value, especially if you chase wide receivers early, pass on those running backs. Grabbing CEH as your RB1 in round 3 is fine, or if you're in a super flex and you focus on quarterbacks early and then grab him. But I think either way could work. But I mean, we probably have to call him a bust, factoring in all of that.
Let's go. Definitely, man, because I'm just looking at his numbers. Like, they aren't terrible. I'm not saying he's a bad running back. It's just the expectation, the price tag that came with him. And I really think we're going to see another hype train going into the season, to where I don't understand it. Like, I don't see why. You know what I mean? Because Damian Williams is coming back. He is.
I don't know. I don't know if the hype will be there. I mean, I actually kind of see it the other way. Williams is coming back.
They're going to probably bring in a veteran as well.
Right. I don't know. I think he could remain a value, maybe most of the offseason.
I find it weird, though, that he was a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and then they still ended up bringing in a veteran. Like, I know they brought in LaShawn McCoy, but Bell, that was kind of like mid-season. It was kind of weird that they did that. I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, it felt a little, it kind of felt like a desperation move.
Yeah.
And then they didn't really even use him at all. So, I mean, you hear that, that's kind of like almost a meme at this point. They're bringing him in as a motivational ploy or tactic. And, you just kind of roll your eyes at that. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it was.
That's so weird. So going into my next one, a little bit of still CEH. Are you doing Antonio Gibson or CEH in 2021? Who are you buying?
I mean, if it's a one or the other in like, let's say the 2nd or 3rd round, I'm taking Gibson. I'll take Gibson in Dynasty. We've seen Gibson's. Basically, we've seen those two guys flip flop. The Gibson has overtaken CEH in ADP and in trade value and everything. I kind of feel like we haven't even seen the real Antonio Gibson yet, because they basically used him almost as that 2-down back, heavy in the running game, of course. And when he entered the league, that's what we had questions about. Can he really be a running back? We know he can catch the ball. He lined up in the slot. He lined up, he caught passes out of the backfield and everything else at Memphis. But can he run the ball? Well, now we know, he can run the ball. And once they unleash this PPR aspect, which I don't know if it happens in 2021. McKissick had a good year. I think really good. A great year, honestly. So you would have to think they try to replicate that success that both of those guys had But long term, once he starts seeing more targets,
yeah,
I mean, he's a first rounder in Dynasty, I think, probably.
Yeah, so we just have to wait until 2022 to really see the full, the full send on Gibson. That's how I feel also, because
Yep.
as long as JD's there, man, he's going to catch those passes. He's going to see like 60, 70 targets, which is out of this world, being that, we're in 2021 talking about JD McKissick.
Yeah. I mean, he was that kind of guy that fantasy players always chase, if he just gets the targets, that, he's basically a wide receiver with a running back designation. And it finally hit, right? We didn't see it coming. I mean, we do have to obviously consider the quarterback changes there. So
Alex Smith.
right. It's not going to be Alex Smith, so we'll see who it is.
Hopefully it's not Heineke. I like the hype. I like the story behind Heineke. I like that he's a mobile quarterback as well. But man, go ahead and go and get that veteran, man. I really feel like they need that to win that division. The chances are there.
Yeah, I mean, their defense is ready. Their running game is ready. Get one more wide receiver and figure out the quarterback. And obviously, I mean, that's a lot easier said than done. I know, right? They've kind of built their team, they didn't do it on purpose. I mean, Haskins busted, right? But they've kind of built their team so differently than any other, where every other team, let's find the quarterback and then get everything else. And because they reached on Haskins and he busted, they've had to kind of do it the opposite way. But there's just so many quarterbacks available this year. I mean, not even just all these, not just Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, but I mean, so many options. Be aggressive with Jameis. I mean, imagine Jameis on that team.
Yes. I love it. I've been rooting for him for a while.
Yeah.
Go ahead and get him. Bring in a Matt Ryan. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick or Mariota. Just bring someone in that's capable. I mean?
Yeah. So many names are out there, whether it's free agency or trades. I mean, we've got 5 first rounders supposedly in the NFL draft. Like, you just can't go with Heineke. You just can't.
Nah, it looks like good for the good moral story. He made us ready to get a contract, but man, you have to go take that division while you can. I mean, the Cowboys are in shambles with their quarterback situation. We don't know if Jalen Hurts is the real deal with the full commitment to the season, and there's just a lot of questions in that division, especially with the Giants. How did I forget about them, man? What's going on with them? But man, oh man, they have to go out and get it done. But my next guy, I'm a big believer. I call him the Quad Master 2.0.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, I know where we're going here.
Is it worth the hype, man? Like, how are we looking at him in 2021, even with, Jamal Williams possibly resigning?
I think the hype has actually been pretty slow with him. I've actually been surprised. Again, from a dynasty perspective, we've seen the ADP grow, but not by a crazy amount. And the trades that I've seen are certainly reasonable. So, I mean, we're such a reactive bunch in dynasty, and in fantasy in general. But I mean, we saw it this week earlier with the Vikings news, right? They cut Kyle Rudolph, and now everybody loves Irv Smith. Well, you should have loved Irv Smith, a long time ago. Yeah. And if you're playing Dynasty, not that it's too late to get him, certainly, but just kind of see these things coming a little bit. Yeah, so, a little bit. I mean, maybe Aaron Jones ends up staying. That's possible. I mean, they could tag him. And Jamal Williams certainly would be easier to retain than Jones. So, at least I would say at least one of those guys is staying, but Jones is probably gone. And we're going to wait until Jones is gone and say, go buy AJ Dillon.
Yeah. So I'm glad it's so little right now. I'm glad it's not exploding, because I'm one of those guys that are rooting for him, man. I definitely love his commitment of losing the weight. He's now to 230, going into last season. That's Saquon Barkley's weight, by the way. But man, I really think they might get rid of, not get rid of, but they won't re-sign Jones, being that, with them taking AJ Dillon, so high in the draft as a prospect. Right. I feel like they were already signaling like, hey man, we can't pay you because Aaron Rodgers takes up like 33% of the cap. So there's that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm really glad it's like very, very little of this hype train about AJ Dillon, because I still want to buy him everywhere I can.
I think there's still a chance. I haven't looked at like early best ball ADP lately, but in Dynasty the price is still reasonable. So yeah, if you like him, go get him. I mean, I've got some of the same concerns as probably everybody else. Going back to the PPR conversation, right? Like what's the upside there? Is he going to get involved in the passing game? So I think I would say a little bit of a limited ceiling, but again, that's a team we should be chasing their offense. And if Dillon's the starting running back, then I want a piece of that.
I want all of it. Oh man. So coming to an end, I mean, what is some of the advice that you can give for, guys like me, for up and coming, fantasy channels, brands, or personalities in the community? Like, what is some advice you can give us?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I guess I would say, first of all, it was like a really slow growth for me. And not that I'm at the top of the mountain or anything like that. I mean, I'm still working my way up, but it certainly did not happen overnight. But I think, any success that I've had can kind of go back to a couple things. First is activity, just being super duper active, whether that's on Twitter, on YouTube, as you're doing, like wherever your space is, be the most active guy or girl there, so that's a huge part of it. Just kind of make yourself seen that way. And then the other piece is relationships. Build those relationships, get to know as many people as you can. And when I say get to know, I mean, not just, I follow him and he follows me, but really build those relationships, and then, you're building that community yourself. And that's certainly going to help you grow, as it's going to give you more opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, great advice, man. I definitely take that and cherish it. I definitely agree, man, to just be out there, be friendly, and try to be, active in the community, and try to like build some of these relationships. Like, I'm really good friends with Troy King. I'm really good friends, with a couple other guys out there. But Troy is like one of the guys that I feel like is really genuine, and he's like really personable too, and he's approachable. He's down to, jump on big or small brands and do a podcast, and I really admire that about him. And it's really dope to have him as a friend, to say that he's a friend in the fantasy community. So I definitely agree. Like that goes a very long way.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels, I don't know, it feels weird at times, I guess. But I mean, I feel like some of the best friends I have in life at this point have come from this fantasy football community. And, and a lot of them I've gotten to meet in person. It's not just Twitter talk, but that's, to me, that's it. Like I said, sometimes kind of weird, but mostly pretty cool. And it's led to some great opportunities for me.
Man, I love this fantasy community, man. They're open arms when I first came in, and everybody's supportive, and everybody just, wants to share your content and just figure out what you got going on. And I love that about the community, man.
Well, you're doing great work here. You're certainly on your way for sure. I've loved catching up with your content and everything else.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you watching, man. But I'm going to let you get out of here. Don't want to take up too much of your time. But again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to chop it up with you, man.
Absolutely. Anytime, man.
All right, man. I'll see you.